more consistent, obviously, from start to finish, and we had some guys step up and play very, very well. TJ was amazing in the first half and real gritty in the second half, and I like the way Chris Duarte played tonight. we got hard playing guys, really hung in at the end too. So the fight was there. We just the slow start hurt us.
Yeah, I mean that's just the evolution of the game of basketball, evolution of my career and the season, and seeing different coverages and things like that. But I got to be better. So, kudos to them. Jimmy did a really good job. They had a lot of different guys contribute to guard me defensively. But, yeah, I got to be better.
As Tyrese Halliburton, you got to be better after the Pacers lost last night at Miami. Rick Carlisle talking about finishing. Have that consistency from start to finish. Didn't have it last night, and another loss. Haven't won a road game since before Christmas. Matt Painter started it off with, having to go through some things. Lost to Indiana. Now they got to bounce back tonight against Iowa. We'll see if they can do that. I'm Vince Welch with Dane Fife and our producer, Jimmy Cook. Welcome to the Fan on a Thursday afternoon. NBA trade deadline today, 3 o'clock. Are the Pacers going to do anything between now and 3? Wouldn't expect anything from an earth-shattering perspective, but don't be surprised if maybe we see a little something on the fringes. I would anticipate it because, Dane, as I watched the Pacers, and again last night, kind of had the same thoughts about things they need, and why not? I mean, why stand pat? Or do you get where you want to get by standing pat? Because as I look at it, the Pacers, and it happened again last night, got crushed on the boards. They don't have a good rebounding team. They struggle in stopping the dribble drive to the basket. And they don't have a guy that gets to the basket off the dribble drive, breaking down somebody from the perimeter with an aggressive finish. And I don't know, Matherin, I think, can be that guy, but he only played 4 minutes in the second half last night. So what do you do? I mean, so much of the Pacers offense last night started late in the clock or later in the clock and well outside the three-point line, and they were having trouble getting inside against that Miami defense. So do you stand pat or do you tweak things a bit?
Well, I think you stand pat because I think it's important that we recognize they have a good team, a young team that's plays together. They seem to like each other. I think most importantly, they seem to enjoy being coached by Coach Carlisle and his staff. And the delicate part of this is, what are you going to get when you go out free agency? Are you going to get a superstar that has an ego that's probably in most cases difficult to coach? Are you going to get what are you going to get? And what the concern would be,
they don't need a superstar, though, do they? I mean, don't they need the guys that are going to do kind of some of the – they need a rebounder. Yeah. I mean, they're getting beaten regularly on the boards. I mean, they gave up the second chance points, killed them again last night against Miami. So other than, I don't think rebounding is I love Miles Turner, and I'm glad they extended him. Yeah. Another double-double for Miles last night. But the rebounding element is not the strength of his game.
I think the problem with getting a rebounder right now is finding one that somebody's willing to give up. Those are the role players. Those are the guys that hold the team together. Those are guys like Draymond Green. And I always go to Draymond because I coached Draymond, but I know what he does for a team that doesn't show up on the stat sheet as much. And so what you're doing is you're asking somebody where, back to Draymond Green, he's not the best player, but he's probably the most valuable. As weird as that probably sounds with the Warriors. And I know he's getting older. But that's what I think you're asking is, who's going to give up the kind of player that the Pacers probably really want? A coachable player, a glue and guts player, a player that's going to go after every rebound. I'm not sure you're going to find that.
Valuable, certainly, and I don't think the Pacers need to make a major, I like their pieces. But I'm not sure. And Quinn Buckner made a comment on the telecast last night, and I thought it was a legitimate. He and Chris Denari were having the conversation about not being quite where Miami is in regards to their experience together. And the togetherness of the young Pacers team haven't, Halliburton hasn't even been there. Well, he's been there right at a year. So these guys, for the most part, haven't even played together a year. So are our expectations too high? Are they going to get better at defending the dribble drive or creating off the dribble so they're not late in the clock having to force up a defended three? But I still think in the when you get right down to, and ultimately we look at this team wants to be a playoff team, and you want them to be a playoff team. In the playoffs, you got to defend and rebound. And I think those are the two biggest weaknesses for the Pacers right now. And I don't know how you get better with the same personnel unless those players, obviously you want them to improve. I see the potential of improving defensively a little bit better than seeing them improving from a rebounding perspective. But
another Eastern Conference opponent just got better. Shams Charania reports the Milwaukee Bucks acquired Jay Crowder from the Brooklyn Nets for 5 second-round picks. So there you go. I'll keep you updated on those throughout the day.
How about the trade? So the trade deadline is 3 o'clock this afternoon. And you mentioned Draymond Green, and I think that's interesting because I think Draymond is incredibly talented. If there's a knock on Draymond, it's maybe that he brings a little drama.
He's a loose cannon.
Yeah, he brings some drama to the deal. But I think that's an interesting conversation. And Marlon Jackson and I were talking about it a little bit yesterday in regards to Aaron Rodgers. Is he so talented that you overlook the drama that he brings? And I think with Draymond, you do. The drama isn't so much that the talent doesn't overcome it. But how about what's going on with Brooklyn? And your guy Matt Ishbia.
Ishbia.
Right? Ishbia. How do you say it?
Ishbia.
Yep. The Michigan State guy. And, he just bought the Suns for billions.
And he's your guy, too.
And he is my guy. And he, although I didn't pronounce his name correctly, but now he's my guy because now I know how to pronounce his name.
His old coach, Tom Izzo, still mispronounces his name. He's pronounced it every
He
week.
played at Michigan State, all right? Not a great player.
No, walk on.
But he now owns the Phoenix Suns. And his first week on the job, he throws out the, hey, rebuild us edict. And now Kevin Durant is a member of the Suns. So now Phoenix has Chris Paul, old but still usable, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Ayton.
Sure. That's
the
a squad.
Favorites. They got to be the favorites in the West now, I got to believe. If not the overall favorite to win it all. And this is a guy, he was a walk-on at Michigan State, and now he's got billions, and he just bought the Phoenix Suns.
Well,
good for them. Good for him.
HBO Real Sports has an unbelievable segment on Matt Ishbia.
Tell me about this guy.
Well, he grew up Birmingham, Michigan. He's the same age as myself, and I knew of him just because he was a good player around the city. We all kind of suburbs of Detroit. But I knew him when he played against him.
So you played against him in high school?
Yeah. No, I didn't, but I knew of him.
But you knew of it,
yeah.
Say in high school. So for those that maybe aren't familiar with Dane's background, Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan, 1998. Not only Mr. Basketball Michigan, McDonald's All-American.
Keep going, big boy. Keep going.
Duke, Indiana, Michigan State. Of course, there's Michigan schools because you were Michigan Mr. Basketball.
I had Vince Carter as my host at North Carolina. Shane Battier, my host at Duke.
How about that? So why? How did you turn down Michigan State and Michigan as a Michigan kid to go to Indiana?
The general. It's that simple.
Was it?
Coach Knight was my guy. And
from childhood? He was your guy as a kid?
So I was 6 years old, and I watched the Michigan-Indiana game at Michigan for the Big Ten Championship basketball. And I was so enamored by how Brent Musburger and Billy Packer talked about the gym. I think Indiana got beat by 30. They got run out of the gym right off the opening tip. Richard Relford from Michigan got the ball and just went and dunked all over Indiana. I remember watching Coach Knight yell at Darryl Thomas and Winston Morgan and Todd Jadlow. And then he went at Steve Alford at the end of the game. But just how Brent Musburger and Billy Packard described Coach Knight, just how they talked about Coach Knight in a way that it was just fascinating, almost like a professor. And that hooked me. That hooked me with the Hoosiers.
And your dad was on staff at Michigan by the time you were a senior in high school. Is that right?
No, my dad was on staff, ironically, for the last undefeated. He coached against the last undefeated team in college basketball, which was Indiana. He was on the bench at the 1976 national championship game. He was on Michigan's bench with Johnny Orr.
So was he not pressuring, but urging you to go to an in-state school?
Well, at that point, and my brother went to Michigan too, but at that point, Michigan had all of those sanctions looming. Steve Fisher had been fired, and so it was an easy decision not to go to Michigan. All the Ed Martin scandal, for those that recall, I don't think Jimmy was born yet. Gosh, he doesn't have a grade.
Everybody's got a scandal, though, right? I mean,
that's true.
But
I didn't quite
have come to light
understand this.
somehow.
I was young and naive, like Jimmy is now. And Jimmy doesn't have a gray hair on him. It's
sickening,
pathetic,
isn't it?
You think he's combing in some
I
hair
think
dye?
he's so young he doesn't need to.
Jimmy, do you even have a mustache?
I don't know whether to take these as compliments or insults. I haven't decided yet.
Do you even shave?
I do
you have hair on
I
your
do
legs?
shave, Coach. I do. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So Vince Carter hosted you in North Carolina?
Vince was my host.
What was that like?
Just incredible. And they had Antoine Jameson, who those are two Hall of Famers.
And what did they do? What'd you do on your?
Nothing special. I wasn't a partier. And I just remember Vince's dorm room. It was just one big king-size bed. It's all it was. Like there was just a narrow walkway around three sides of the bed. And then he had a closet with his dresser, but it was just one king-size bed. I loved my visit to Chapel Hill, loved my visit to Duke. But
Chapel Hill's a beautiful campus.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. I love my visit to Michigan State.
Yeah.
The hardest coach to turn down was Coach Izzo, but he didn't answer the phone. They were in practice, which made it a lot easier.
You left him a voicemail?
Yeah. So actually the hardest coach to talk to was Coach K. I told him I was going to Indiana, and it was quiet. Quiet for 2 seconds is one thing, but quiet for about 8 or 9, it's like, Coach K, you still there?
Did we get disconnected?
There is a update regarding that trade I mentioned earlier. It involves the Pacers.
Okay.
Indiana
bring
is
it.
acquiring Bucks Jordan Nwora and 2 second-rounders in this Nets-Bucks 3-way deal. So that was the deal that involves Jay Crowder heading to Milwaukee. So
And the Pacers
they
are
got
giving...
Jordan Nwora. They're getting Jordan Nwora and 2 second-rounders. It doesn't say from Sham's latest tweet what the Pacers gave up. So I'll let you know when I have that, but that's who they're bringing in.
Does Nwora rebound enough for you?
I was going to say,
Vince?
what does he do? Fill me in, Jimmy, on what kind of player he is.
Louisville. I think it's more about the second rounders, maybe.
Probably. Nwora this year hasn't registered minutes in a couple of games. His last outing was on the 31st of December, 6 minutes, 14 minutes.
Size and weight?
Yeah. 6'8", 225. 24 years old.
Yeah.
Second rounder back in 2020. So take that for what you will. His minutes have been sporadic, anywhere from 6 to 14 in the month of January.
I like the move because you get the glue guys in the second round. You really do. You get the glue guys, you get the rebounders, you get the guts guys.
Remember
in the second
they used to
round.
have like 6 or 7 rounds? Now, I mean...
That's why I didn't get drafted.
5 points and 3 rebounds.
They just ran out of rounds?
They ran out of rounds. You said 5 points.
5 points and 3 rebounds in January. So there you go.
So,
I think I'd rather talk about me, Vince.
Yeah. Talk about you a little bit more.
Jimmy's getting sick of it.
So you tell Coach K you're not coming, silence on the phone. Did you, Dean Smith? Yeah.
Dean Smith had just retired.
So it was Bill Guthridge?
Yep. So Dean Smith retired in October, and I made my decision in November.
How much of that decision when it was because Dean Smith had retired?
0. I was going to Indiana. I was just enjoying the attention.
So you said no to Izzo, and then later you went back and were an assistant for Izzo for 10 seasons, 10 years?
It was
how much crap did he give you about not choosing him to begin with as a player?
Not too much. Not too much. But it was one of the greatest lessons in life, honestly, that I ever got as it relates to kind of the working life, my adult life, that I could turn Tom Izzo down. And, you know, as kids, like, if you're not for me, you're against me. I mean, I know you're a big kid.
Yeah.
And, Jimmy, you're still a kid unless otherwise.
What is a
unless
kid?
you tell
Define
me.
a kid by age for me, please.
Well, you don't have a gray hair. You're barely shaven.
I didn't ask you that. I said by age. I want a definition
By
so I
age?
can know when I finally arrived.
I don't think age makes a difference.
Okay.
I really don't.
Yeah, you can be a kid
That's right.
regardless, I think.
That's right.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Billy Madison?
I have seen Billy Madison.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
If you didn't, we'd have thrown you out.
I understand. I know.
So it was one of the, it's one of the, but if you're not for me, you're against me. It's one of the greatest lessons in my life where Coach Izzo saw enough in me that he didn't hate me. He was willing to hire me, you know, and I always kind of was taught, not taught, but I just always, if you're not for me, you're against me, you're my enemy. I'll never have anything to do with you again. And I just thought, it just showed me like, okay, what's Coach Izzo up to here? He's thinks enough of me that he's willing to hire me in his program after it wasn't, you know, it was Mr. Basketball. It wasn't just some obscure guy turning down Michigan State. It was a polarizing moment and an embarrassing moment for one. So Shane Battier, the guy that was before me, turned Michigan State down. It was public. And then the next Mr. Basketball. And so it was just a great lesson to where, you know, people do things for a reason. It's not always personal. And for me, turning down Coach Izzo to play for him was not personal. And you have to be able to get over things, and you can't hold grudges. I thought that was a big moment.
One of the things I enjoy, and this is I like the minutia of things. So one of the things I always like to watch if I'm at a game live, or it always bugs me when they don't show it if I'm watching TV, is the handshake line at the end of a game. And because I think you can really, if you've been around, you can really tell some things from the handshake line.
Yep.
So after you turn down Izzo and you go to Indiana, and then the next time you played Michigan State, did he say anything to you in the handshake? Not necessarily anything negative, but I mean, was his...
Always professional. I've known him since I was 12. He recruited my brother Dugan, who was 6 years older than myself. Dugan also turned him down. But...
Man, he had to just been pissed at you guys.
I know.
Your family.
That's what I thought.
Your family. He hated the Fifes.
Yeah, I know. But no, he was always great. He got a little ticked off during a game once when I was playing against him because I was big on learning the other team's plays. And so I'd watch him, you know, live game action. I'd watch him trying to deliver a play call because I was trying to gain an advantage, and he snapped at me. He sniped at me. I don't know exactly what he said, but I know it wasn't friendly. Quit staring at me, you. So we're buds now, though. We're buds now.
When was the last time you talked to him?
2 days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I talked to him quite a bit. He's been with me every step of the way.
Was it when you left Michigan State to take a job elsewhere? How did he take that?
You know what? He was okay with it. We went back and forth a couple times on, you know.
Did he advise you not to do it?
He did not. Coach Izzo did not advise me not to take the job at any step of the way, and he'd never do that. And I know you know that. It was always generally what he didn't say as opposed to what he said, and just the simple fact that there were so many things in play for me. Not to rehash, it was kind of my decision more so than what Coach Izzo said or didn't say to go. And he was great with it. He was with me every step of the way. You know, once I left, he totally understood. And he, you know, his last, he goes, "Gosh, I'm surprised you lasted 10 years. I couldn't work for me more than 2 years." Pretty good Izzo impression.
I was going to say there's always somebody either on the staff or a player that impersonates the coach.
Well, I would say that
who when you played at Indiana, who did the best Bob Knight impersonation?
Myself and Tom Coverdale. Tom Coverdale could do his walk very well. The way he walked, it was just beautiful. And I could. I just called him just I would call them, I think, generalities that with general in quotes there. But I would do the general impressions. I was the only one that would have the guts.
Did Bob Knight ever come in the middle of you doing? Did he ever see you doing?
Coach Knight never caught me doing any. I think he caught Tom Coverdale impersonating his walk. And he would always stare up at the top, just above the lockers when he'd come in and talk. He'd make eye contact, but he'd always look up above you. And Coverdale even found Cov doing that part of it. Just, thank God he was in a good mood when he caught Coverdale, because it could have gotten ugly if he hadn't.
Yeah, those are the things. I mean, because there's always somebody on the team that has the impersonation of the coach.
That's some deep minutia for you.
I love that.
You're digging that.
I love that. Big game tonight. Looking at the headlines for what's going on tonight. We talked about the NBA trade deadline. We'll keep you updated on that. A couple of big trades, including, and not a big trade, but the Pacers involved in one, and we'll get more from Jimmy on that in a moment. Pacers did lose to the Heat last night. Number one, Purdue back at it. First game since losing to Indiana. They play Iowa this evening, and we'll talk with Seth Greenberg a little bit later. He's got the call for that one tonight. Is that Big Ten Network or is that FS1? Do we know?
If it's Seth, it's got to be ESPN.
ESPN.
ESPN. Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. And then the IU women's team.
Oh,
I've never enjoyed women's basketball more than I have Terry, not even just this year, but Terry Moore and what she has done with that team at Indiana. I will watch them. That's appointment TV for me now. The IU, honest to goodness, I look and see are the IU women playing tonight. I loved the IU Purdue game. In Purdue, long time successful women's program.
Yeah.
And so after the men's IU Purdue game, the next day, the IU women played at Mackey against Purdue. It was a terrific game. But what Terry Moore has done, and they're up to number 4 in the country now, and big fan of theirs. And I think we're going to maybe have her on tomorrow.
We're working on it.
Working on that.
We're hoping and praying.
Hopefully that'll be the case. But they play Iowa tonight down in Bloomington. So couple of good games, college games, Purdue and Iowa tonight. How do you see Purdue bounce back okay tonight? I mean, we heard Matt Painter there on the clip off the top saying, you got to go through some things, and going through some things was the loss to Indiana.
Yep.
But you got to grow from it and get better and respond, and that's the opportunity tonight.
Well, I was no slouch, and I think they're still a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. You can get the Iowa that stinks it up, or you can get the Iowa that goes to Rutgers and beats the brakes off them. You can get the Iowa that's down 20 at half to Indiana, or you can get the second half Iowa that comes out and beats the brakes off you. And so it's no different playing against Purdue. I think Purdue's probably suffering. Purdue's probably got a little post-Indiana hangover, as I think Indiana had the other night post-Purdue, because either way, it's a highly emotional week. It's a highly emotional game, and there's going to be some letdown whether you win or lose. So I think I'd like to say it's up to Purdue tonight, and it is to an extent, but it's really up to Iowa as well, because are you going to get the Jekyll Iowa or are you going to get the Hyde Iowa? And there's really no rhyme or reason to what makes Iowa play well or play like dirt.
This is thing that I think probably from a coach's standpoint, you'll say you hate this kind of conversation, but I think you can get it. I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today. The win for Indiana against Purdue was a bigger win for IU than it was a big loss for Purdue. And I say that because Purdue has had Indiana's number. Yeah. Indiana winning, it was the biggest win for that regime, I think. The Indiana coaching regime for Woodson. That was they needed that win.
Yeah.
At home against the rival, the number one team. Indiana had been playing well, but they really needed that signature win in that stretch. So huge for Indiana to do that. Purdue, and I know Painter would argue you want to win them all regardless, but they're still number one afterwards.
Yeah, and that's the key. They're still number one.
They lost on the road against their biggest rival, but it gets compounded, I think, if they don't come back and win tonight.
Yeah, I think I would agree. If from Purdue's standpoint, right now you're fighting for a seed in the NCAA tournament. That is the big discussion. That's the big focus internally, probably for Coach Painter and his staff. Yes, you want to continue to get better, have your team improve. As Coach Paint said, they got to go through some things. But right now, you want to show the NCAA committee that you are a number one seed, that you're the top overall seed. This is a game that they can win. It's a game they should win. The game they probably will win.
They need to win.
Yes, and a game they probably will win.
Yeah.
But probably not without some drama. But I think if you're Matt Painter and you're waking up in the morning looking at yourself in the mirror, you got to say, hey, I got Zach Edey on my team. I got some pretty good players on my team. And, you go in and you coach them up. And you be totally honest with them. Here's what's at stake. You don't have to talk about NCAA tournament seeds, but here's what we got, guys. We played well enough in the second half to win that game at Indiana. We proved enough that we're a better team than Indiana in the second half. You take away Assembly Hall, and you take away that first half where I think some guys were a little shell-shocked by the crowd, probably a better team than Indiana. And I think let's keep in mind, Purdue's got a heck of a basketball coach.
Yeah.
They got a great leader, and behind every leader is a great staff, and Purdue's got a good staff. And they're going to get it done against Iowa. I think they just got to get it they got to get the W in good fashion.
Edey gets the majority of the recognition, and understandably so. He's probably going to be the National Player of the Year.
Yeah.
But what impresses me most about Purdue, and I told this to Painter when he was on with us a couple of weeks ago, he's doing it with two freshman guards.
Yeah. In
the Big Ten.
Yep.
And that is, maybe it's been done before. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember a time when the number one team in the country in a conference like the Big Ten was starting two freshman guards.
Right. Yeah, and I think Fletcher Lawyer's job, first and foremost, knock down shots. And he's got the guts to do it. He's got the guts to do it in big moments.
Doesn't play like a freshman. No. Neither one of them play like a freshman.
Right.
But to shoot it like that as a freshman, I think is impressive.
And then Braden Smith, ultimately, look, get the ball up the floor and take care of it. Get it to the right people. And then they've got Ethan Morton. Similar deal than the other two. Ethan Morton, you're going to guard the other team's best guard by and large. And then we're going to work around Zach Edey. We're going to wind the defense up, and we're either going to throw it inside one, we're going to drive it two, or we're going to shoot it as our third option. It's not complicated, yet you have to have guys that are willing to say, hey, look, I ain't the star. I'm not the dude.
I made that comment with Painter when we had him on because I thought Ethan Morton is that guy. I mean, he was Mr. Basketball in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, he was a big-time player in high school.
He sure was.
And now in college, he's averaging, 4 or 5 points, maybe something like that. I mean, I think the game previous to our conversation, he'd had like 4 points and 3 rebounds. But to have a player who comes in as Mr. Everything, which most high school players are when they're playing at that level.
It's kind of like the two of us with Jimmy. We've got to deal with Jimmy, superstar, massive ego, and knows a lot of stuff.
Can barely get the headset on over there.
Yes, but he knows everything about everything when it comes to sports, and that's a compliment. But you're right. The biggest thing the other day, not to rehash too much, the biggest thing that happened in the first half of the IU Purdue game is what? Let's see if you know.
Well, I would say that IU made shots.
I'll give you a hint.
For three-pointers.
Just we're talking about it. Jimmy, see if you're listening. He's sleeping.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Ethan Morton got his second foul with like 3 minutes into the game.
Yeah. But Indiana, if Indiana doesn't make perimeter shots, they are very pedestrian because as good as Trace Jackson Davis is, he can't do it on his own. And that's why the other night, Miller Kopp hitting those, 4 of 6 from three-point range is critical because the way it impacts the way teams defend Trace.
Yep. But Jalen Hood-Schifino, Coach Izzo would always talk about the head of the snake. You take the head off, you're dead. And that's what Ethan Morton has the ability to do. Him getting in foul trouble, whether it's – and then Galloway is just lethal.
Coach's kid.
When he's able to come off a ball screen, he's lethal. and get out in the open floor, lethal. Jimmy's yelling break. We're not breaking, Jimmy. We're going straight through.
No commercial, straight to the 3 hours. It's like a telethon.
But that was the biggest issue with Purdue the other day.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember when you came out of high school, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you the player that you reminded me of. And I want to see if that's a compliment to you or if you take offense to it.
Probably a compliment.
That's Dane Fife. I'm Vince Welch. This is 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.